Now at this point, I know what you're probably thinking. What am I doing with these things in the Jeep? And we've got some work to do today. I've got this custom sleeping platform that my dad and I built a few years back, and it has worked really well for the last 2.5, 3 years. But it's time to upgrade the storage and sleeping solution inside the Jeep. I've ordered a Goose Gear plate system, and I'm going to switch things out because shortly I will be living in the Jeep. But what has worked for a while has some flaws, and so I'm going to try a new system out, and that's going to be utilizing the Goose Gear plate system. And it is extremely cold out here in Colorado. It's like 3 degrees outside. As you can see behind me, here's the sleeping platform. Underneath of it is storage where I keep my camp kitchen gear in 2 front runner boxes. And in this empty space here, we've got the fridge. There's a couple things we need to do first. One of them is to remove the fridge slide from the platform because this is still good. I'll probably sell it because I bought the new one that works with the Goose Gear plate system, so I don't really need this. Next, what I'll have to do is undo the screws here, so that way I can pop this top part from the rest of the platform, because this is one giant piece, and that'll make it easier for me to start taking out the rest of the platform one by one. Also, this big cubby that's back here also needs to go. Luckily, that is a separate unit, so that should be pretty easy to just pop off. We did use a ton of nails on this, so I need to be careful about that, and that's also why I have a crowbar. It's not like I used a bunch of screws to put things together, which would have probably, in hindsight, made it a lot easier to take apart, but whatever. This is gonna be fun. So one of the big reasons why I'm changing out this system is because I need to be able to access everything from inside the Jeep, and this has made it pretty difficult to do so. For instance, below the sleeping platform fits 2 of my front runner boxes where my camp kitchen gear is. That's great, it's super organized, it's tucked, it's out of the way. However, you can't access it from the inside. You have to go out, open up the tailgate, and then pull each one out individually. As we start to take this apart, I'll walk you through some of the decisions that we made. One was very important, and that was about sleeping inside the Jeep, which is why we have the sleeping platform. And one of the things we did was cover the edges with this rubber material. And that was just so if I bump into it, it wouldn't hurt or scratch any of the sharp edges. And it also worked really well. So that's why you see this rubber padding on the sides of the sleeping platform. So here is the cubby that I just pulled out from the Jeep, and luckily this was actually screwed on, so that was really easy to take out. And this was used for a few different reasons. The top part here we built to fit my Goal Zero Yeti 1000 battery that I used to power the fridge, and the bottom part was just kind of like a catch-all space. And typically I would keep tools, windshield wiper fluid, my toiletries. The only thing that was a little bit of an issue was the Goal Zero battery is fairly heavy, and so having to lift that up at an awkward angle to get into the Jeep was just awkward, and it was frustrating. It would have been easier if I could just slide it on like the bottom or keep it lower in the Jeep, which is what I'm going to do for the next interior build. And the bottom part here was actually pretty convenient. I don't really have any complaints here. Another thing you'll notice is you've got these holes on the side, on the right side and on the left side, is actually a third hole on the left side, and that's so that way I can run my cable from the solar panels down through the Jeep and into the battery, and it hides the cable really nicely. The bigger holes are for ventilation because the battery does get hot and it needs some sort of air to move through it. And I never had any issues, so it worked. Alright, so now that we have this ripped out, I'm going to go throw it in the dumpster. The next step is going to be to then rip out the carpets. Now that we've got the old platform taken out, it's time to strip the Jeep of the carpet and then clean the inside of the tub so that way we can put down our sound deadening material. After that, I'll throw in some Armorlite mats for better insulation, and then I'll install the Goose Gear plate system. And once again, it is really cold in Denver. I am picking the coldest time to do this. It's gonna be a high of like 30 today. Well, my other camera is not turning on and some batteries are dead, so I have to record this on my smaller DJI camera. So what I've done is stripped the Jeep out, ripped all of the carpets out, tossed them to the side, and then I've cleaned the inside of the Jeep. I did a first pass using a vacuum cleaner. I did a second pass just with like a spray bottle and some paper towels, and then I did a third pass with some old cotton t-shirts and rubbing alcohol. So now that I've got my area clean, I'm now going to install Dynamat, which is my sound deadening material. And that's just going to be stickied along the tub of the Jeep. Once I'm done with that, I'll put on top the Armorlite that I've purchased, which is going to add some better insulation and also a little more sound deadening. And once I do that, I will then install the Goose Gear Platform. By no means am I a professional at this, because this is my first time doing it and I've not done anything like this before. Let me show you what I have going on. So I have the Dynamat sticky to the floor, and one of the things I've got to be careful of is to make sure I don't cover up the drain holes and also the bolts, like for the seats and bolts elsewhere throughout the Jeep. So I'm trying to do this the best that I can, and you know, I'm feeling pretty good about it. Excited to know what it's going to be like once I get it all insulated, because the Jeep is quite loud when you're riding on the highway and it's supposed to deaden the sound, so we'll see what happens. Alright, it's day 3 of working on this project. I always underestimate how much time and energy this is going to take. And I had other obligations yesterday, so I ran out of time. But I'm back at it this morning. It's a brisk 13 degrees here in Denver, so let's get to it. Alright, I got the front Armorlite mat installed, and I'm not gonna lie, that was a huge pain in the ass. You really have to tuck it underneath parts of the trim in the Jeep, and I've actually had to take off some of the trim in the door sills to be able just to get it to align properly, because I was having a lot of trouble. Because I already had the seats out from when I put in the Dynamat, it made it a little bit easier because I was able to kind of put the seats back on top of the mat and then work the mat around the seat posts. And then I just bolted the seats right back in. So I did have a problem with the middle console. The instructions weren't super clear about me having to tuck it underneath another part of the console, underneath the plastic. So I finally figured that out after watching a couple other YouTube videos, but now I've got the front put back together and I'm going to do the rear part now, and hopefully that isn't, hopefully that's going to be a lot easier. I gotta be honest, that was not fun installing the Armorlite mats, but I got it done, and luckily I don't ever have to do that again. It looks great, and I'm pretty excited to see how it performs. I've read a lot of reviews on it, and it seems to really hold up. And the amount of dirt that I trek into the Jeep, this is going to be a really good purchase. I already know it. It was just a pain in the ass to get it installed. Alright, it's been about a month since I've been working on this project, and unfortunately I didn't have any time to record me installing the Goose Gear Platform. It was entirely way too cold, and I had a bunch of other obligations, and I just needed to get it done. Plus, my Leica SL2S died, and I had to send it in to get it repaired, and I'm still waiting on it. But anyways, the project is complete, and let me show you what it looks like. So this system has completely been a game changer. It has so much storage space underneath, and it allows me to stay inside the Jeep, so that way I can stay out of inclement weather, and I can also do my cooking inside, as well as access to all of my gear. One of the problems that I did have is the plastic panels in the rear. They didn't fit with the Goose Gear Platform, so I went and bought a Dremel and just cut the bottoms off. Didn't do a perfect job, but it got the job done. This project took a whole lot longer than I thought it was going to take, and I'm really glad it's now complete. Thanks for following along, and see you in the next video.